From the European Parliament in Brussels, this is Raw Politics. Thanks for joining us tonight, and this is what we have on the program for you. The big sell. Ursula von der Leyen tries to win over skeptics ahead of a vote on her as Commission President. Shutting it down, Italy closes Europe's biggest migrant center and suggests using military ships to keep them away. Pompous fool, Donald Trump lashes out, and the UK ambassador quits after a leaked cable scandal. Far-right rising star, meet Jordan Bardella, the 23-year-old French MEP with Emmanuel Macron in his sights. And perfect delivery. Hello Kitty infiltrates a commission briefing in tonight's Raw Moment. All right, it is time to meet our panelists this evening. We have Darren McCaffrey, of course, our political editor at Your News. Darren, so what story are you watching?
Well, is this resignation in the UK, or I should say in Washington, a big row involving diplomacy, politics, Trump and Brexit. Seems that essentially Donald Trump, along with Boris Johnson, have managed to get the ambassador essentially to resign.
Right.
It's a big, big moment in British politics.
All right. And also joining us tonight, David McAllister. He's a German MEP from the European People's Party. What about you, David? What are you watching? What story are you watching closely tonight?
Oh, certainly Ursula von der Leyen. And this is the decisive week for her, preparing to get elected next week in Strasbourg.
It's like the job interview week, as they call it. Yeah, all right. And also joining us, Molly Scott-Cato. She's a British MEP and Vice President of the Greens EFA group. What about you, Molly?
I'm also watching Ursula von der Leyen very closely and also intrigued to see whether she will indeed get her majority next week.
Okay, all right. That's exactly the question that we have, and that is where we are beginning tonight. Because the European Parliament is facing a choice. Back Ursula von der Leyen as Commission President, or to reject her and send EU leaders back to the drawing board. Well, von der Leyen needs the backing of 375 MEPs, and she was making the rounds today. After days of silence, she was meeting with parliamentary groups and trying to persuade them to vote for her next week. Socialists and Liberals grilled the President nominee on trade, rule of law and Brexit. She also faced the Green Party, which has voiced its discontent over the European Council's decision to ignore the so-called Spitzenkandidat process. Well, von der Leyen spoke to the Renew group about her vision for Europe and expressed support for more dialogue with citizens.
If there's this vote for the European Union now, with a strong message of the people that they want a united, strong, open-minded, competitive European Union for the future. But we know that there's also skepticism out there. And the best way is to go out and talk to people, have a dialogue.
I mean, since the announcement of von der Leyen's name last week, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of criticism, in fact, and the Greens are one of the strongest voices here that oppose this name. Is it going to be an uphill, steep battle for Ursula von der Leyen to get the backing of the Greens?
I think she's really, in quite a tough place getting our support, because you could hear her there talking about the views of citizens, but actually what citizens showed by voting strongly for Greens is that they wanted to have urgent action on climate change. We haven't seen her coming forward with any proposals for that, and we would have liked to have influence in the Commission. We're part of the pro-European majority here, but we were completely cut out of any deal. And of course, that's not a petty issue. That's an issue that says actually they're rejecting the young people across Europe who voted for hope and voted for strong action on climate change.
So are you not confident that she's going to be able to meet the demands that the Greens put forward and therefore, not be getting
Well,
her
we
support?
still have to consider, and so we haven't made our decision at this stage. But I think the other thing that's of concern to us is that this is a point at which Europe is in crisis. We need to know that we defend the standards of the rule of law and that we have a strong pro-European majority. And we could see that yesterday the ECR group, which is quite far to the right, they were saying, fantastic, she's going to be weaker on the rule of law, effectively. And then today she promised Renew that she'd be strong on the rule of law. And this, to us, is an absolutely fundamental point. If we can't rely on her to stand up against the anti-democratic forces in our continent, then we will not be able to support her.
OK, so let's listen, because in fact she gave a press conference indeed in front of the Renew group, so let's listen to that.
We need a European mechanism addressing all European member states in order to be sure that all the governments respect rule of law in Europe. And we need this mechanism together with sanctions on that in order to be effective.
All right, so that was the Renew Europe group leader, in fact, who was giving the press conference, talking about exactly what you're saying on the rule of law. So, David, I'll go to you. The EPP family, you're from Germany as well. a lot of criticism even from the Germans. What do you think about the battle that she has to face now and even support from the EPP?
Well, last week's developments were astonishing for everyone involved, including the
yourself.
European People's Party.
Sure.
The EPP was strongly in favour of the Spitzenkandidaten process, and I campaigned for Manfred Weber in Germany, but we had to face reality. Things are as they are. There was obviously no majority for neither of the Spitzenkandidaten, neither Manfred Weber or Franz Timmermans. Now we have to look forward. I think that Ursula von der Leyen is an excellent choice. I know her for more than 20 years. She's a convinced European. She's a convincing European. She has a good track record as minister in Germany. And I think we should give her a fair chance.
Is she convincing enough, though? Because the answers that she's been given to a lot of the pointed questions seems to be very generic. Well, you know, we're going to do a good job. We have to bridge divides, etc., which doesn't really say much.
Well, first of all, she's only had a few days to prepare. She knows what she's talking about on defence and security, for instance, because she's been a minister. She's been a minister for labour market reforms and other issues in Germany. But the whole wide range, she has to really study within a few days. And I think very important will be her speech on Tuesday in Strasbourg, where she will present her whole vision of the next 5 years. So I think in the moment we should really listen to what she has to say, and then it's up to the 751 MEPs to judge for themselves if she's right for the job or not.
Is she the best compromise candidate? I mean, you've been talking to a lot of MEPs. We've got a lot of resistance. So is she the best compromise candidate?
Well, in some ways, when you put forward a compromise candidate, they have to compromise in order to be suitable for everyone. I mean, politics is fundamentally about the ability to count, and the big task for Ursula von der Leyen over the next week or so is to try and get the numbers up. And the problem is two things. First of all, can she get above that absolute majority of 375? She possibly can do if she takes an awful lot of the Socialists and Democrats along with her. I think their backing will be crucial. If she gets the Greens on board, she'll get over 400. That's quite a strong majority. I think Juncker got 435, I think, back 5 years ago. The problem is that, you know what, she mightn't take the Socialists with her. She might not get the Greens on board, and then she's really struggling. And I think, what is her pitch, which is like she's from the European family because she grew up in Brussels, though she's never actually worked here. She's not familiar with this place. Her argument also is that in many regards, she's been a minister in Germany. Many would dispute that record. And she's saying one thing, it seems, to one group of people and another thing to another. And that, I think, is where the unease is.
And especially on topics right now that are big issues in the European Union, which need strong responses. Do you think she's starting on a weak footing if she does get through? What does it say about a potential
mandate? I think what would undermine her most is if she depends on the far right to get her majority, or even the ECR, because we can see that the stitch-up involved Eastern Europeans, and their commitment to democracy is not strong, and that's very undermining of the European project. And I also think, coming back to the Spitzenkandidat project, I mean, what have citizens had to do with this? Nobody knew who she was. She's come in from completely outside the European institutions and the electoral process, and that, again, undermines our commitment to democracy. And to us as Greens, having a strong pro-European majority depends on being close to the citizens.
Would you be defending her? I mean, if she goes into this with a weak mandate, what would that mean for the 5 years, for the years that she's the Commission president?
First of all, the situation we're in now, this is the responsibility of the heads of government. They couldn't agree on a Spitzenkandidat. This is not something that the European Parliament is responsible for. The second point is 27 out of 28 heads of government proposed it. It was Germany, our own government, which had to abstain. And so I believe that she would be a good choice as Commission President. And if you don't want her to be elected by the votes of the far right, if they're not supposed to depend, then the best thing is that the Socialists and the Greens vote for her.
Or find a candidate that we could support.
But this isn't the question, though. Isn't the question that, but are you prepared to essentially blow up this process
and go back to the
start
beginning
again? Because we don't know where that leads, and obviously you talk about reputational damage to Europe. That would do a lot of reputational damage.
But the problem for us as Greens, we're always expected to be the nice little child, that does as they're told, but never gets anything in return. We got the biggest increase.
Never heard that before.
We got the biggest increase in the votes here of any of the parties. We had all those people voting for us, and yet somehow we've been cut out of the process. We haven't been given anything, and that's just not acceptable. And why should we give our votes for free? The other three parties, they received all sorts of sweeties out of the process, but somehow we're still supposed to support this in spite of getting nothing. I really think if they want Green support, when they do the deal, they're going to have to include us.
Okay, but
and I agree, it wasn't a Parliament stitch-up, it was a Council stitch-up, but the Council decided they could neglect the Greens, I say at their peril.
And would it be a statement to make for Parliament to say to the Council...
Well, to have a bit of backbone, to say, you know, for example, our President of the Parliament was in fact more or less imposed from the Council as part of the deal, and we should have had the backbone to choose our own President.
But if Parliament rejected Ursula von der Leyen, what would we gain? Nothing at all. The whole process would start again from the beginning. And I don't believe that after all what happened, a Spitzenkandidat in the second round would then be the proposal, suggestion of the Council. I can't imagine that.
OK, let's turn to Greece now and its new leadership. The country's brand new prime minister held his first cabinet meeting today after a sweeping election victory on Sunday. So Kyriakis Mitsotakis, his centre-right New Democracy Party, replaced Alexis Tsipras from the left-wing Syriza. The son of a former prime minister, Mitsotakis promised tax cuts and economic growth to voters as the country has grown tired of years of austerity. OK, let's get more analysis on this from EU Affairs analyst Yannis Koutsomitis, who joins us now from Athens. Yannis, so this is a change in direction for Greece, clearly. What would this mean then for the country?
Well, it's certainly a change because people, especially the middle class, were expecting much more from the Syriza government than Alexis Tsipras. He failed most of the majority of the voters, so they turned to the New Democracy, who is promising growth in the economy, new jobs, better paid jobs, and especially tax cuts, which is the crucial subject right now, how to get these valuable tax cuts that the Eurozone is very reluctant to give this leeway to Greece.
All right, so when we're talking about economic reform, can he deliver this? Because will he be an easier government for the European Union to deal with?
Well, he's very explicit in making Greece into a modern country, into a reformist country in every aspect of the state system that will be renewed and will be under international standards. He's very open in inviting international experts, foreign companies investing, even the institutions are welcomed here to provide expertise. This is not the problem. I think he's a very pro-reform, pro-market, open market-minded prime minister and politician. The problem is there enough fiscal space there
Yannis,
to provide
austerity,
the tax cuts?
What does this mean for austerity for Greece? Because we've associated Greece with austerity for a long time. What does that mean then?
Exactly. In previous year, 2018, Greece performed a super surplus of more than 4% of GDP in primary numbers. So this cannot be sustainable for the midterm future. There has to be some leeway there. But also there needs to be some investment coming in. Investment has not come in since the big bailout program in 2015. The big project in southern Riviera of Athens, the Hellenikon, has been stalled for 4 years. And the first day of government, they met with the land developer to start the process again of the investment.
Yannis, I would like to ask something about the general movement politically here. So this is a swing back to the center. Does this mean people are turning their backs now on populism, at least in Greece? And what does this mean for, when Europe is looking at Greece's example here?
Yes. Well, I interpret it as follows. In 2014-15, when we had this government change, Greece was still under 5 years of austerity and harsh austerity and a deep recession. People wanted something radical. And they chose the radical left party because they wanted some radical solution to the austerity. That solution failed, but now Greece is in a normal state now. It got back its sovereignty. Now it's back on the Eurozone.
Why it swung back. Okay.
Yes, and now people think that a normal or moderate party is more suitable for the next years.
Thank you for your analysis there. Yannis Koutsomitis talking to us there from Greece. And joining us here in the studio is Maria Spiraki. She's a Greek MEP from the new government party, New Democracy, and from the EPP group. And we also have Stelios Kouloglou, also a Greek MEP from the former government party, Syriza, in the GUE group there. Okay, let's talk about this big shift in the government. Starting with you for the New Democracy Party, this is a shift in direction for Greece. Is this what is in the plan? This is in the works for Greece? A total shift in direction away from what Syriza
It is a return to normality. And that's, I think, the first step. because Mr. Mitsotakis is staying at the center of the political spectrum. He's center-right, but he's insisting at the center. He's going to start with cutting tax rates, starting with corporate tax and secondly with personal taxes. He is going to guarantee safety for the citizens because we have a lot of criminality during the previous 5 years. And I think that it is the first significant step.
Is it easy to say that, but can he deliver that? I
yes,
think that's the key question.
He can deliver. And the first question is the growth rate. Okay. If he finally creates a stable environment for the investments, then the growth rate will finally go up. Now we have a growth rate approximately 2.2 according to the Commission forecast.
I want to ask about the comment about Syriza being a party that's good only in extreme circumstances, but not in normal situations. That
you think so?
This is what was said by the analyst.
Yes, this is the normal situation, and Syriza got 32%, almost. You think this is?
But the party didn't make it.
No, it did not make it. I'll tell you why. First of all, because there was austerity. Austerity hurts every government, and this austerity imposed by the European Union and the Troika and the lenders, etc. And second, it was the Prespas agreement. A Prespas agreement that was used in a very demagogic, populist, nationalistic way by the New Democracy.
But that's said about Syriza too.
To hurt the government. This is the best agreement ever. It was applauded by every fraction of the European Union, of the European Parliament, including the Popular Party, you know. And now, but now the Mr. Mitsotakis played the nationalistic game. He managed to get a lot of votes from the Golden Dawn. Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazi party, is out now.
Yeah,
this is a good news. The bad news is these are the votes. They were voting for the neo-Nazis. Okay, so that's the two reasons. There is no something like normality or not normality. And I'll tell you something, because you are talking about the kind of modern, and I was listening to this guy. You know, you know what the first action of the new Prime Minister was?
Yeah.
You know, he took under his personal responsibility the secret services, the National Press Agency, and the National Radio and Television. You think this is a modern thing?
Okay, when we're talking... hang on a second.
Had Maduro has done this, we would have sanctions against him. We would have denouncement in the parliament.
If you look at what's happening in Greece, how would you assess the situation now, new government and new direction, and comments from our two MEPs here?
Great success for our friends from Neo Demokratia. I congratulate Kyrios Mitsotakis becoming the new Prime Minister. This is good news for Greece, and this is good news for the European Union. I think the whole European People's Party is happy to welcome him.
Will it be easier to deal with Greece with this new government? You know, when it comes to budget, getting books in order?
Well, Kyrios himself was very aware of in which enormous challenges Greece is facing, and I think he has to do 4 things now. He needs to guarantee financial stability, he needs to reduce the bad loans, he needs to boost investments and employment, and he needs to make the country more competitive and reduce administrative burdens. That's his agenda.
Is there a reason why a Golden Dawn is out of the picture in this scenario? Is there a reason why people have swung back to the center? Of course, I ask you from the center first. So is there a reason?
Yes, because we decided to tackle populism without big words, without any kind of promises. We decided to turn the page. And people were following us. That's why we succeed such a success.
But he was saying that...
and that's why I do not interrupt you, Stelios. I do not interrupt you, Stelios. And regarding the Prespa agreement, there was an agreement without taking into account the sensitivities of the Greek people, especially the people who are coming from Macedonia. It is my constituency. And I would like to say that this is one of the reasons that Tsipras has finally lost the elections, because he ignored everyone. He decides to go ahead with an agreement without taking into account the sensitivities, without protecting our Macedonian products, without taking into account even Copenhagen criteria, which are quite important in order to have an accession of North Macedonia to the European Union. So no compromise on this, and we are going ahead with keeping, of course, the agreement as such. But
I know you disagree.
Trying to amend specific articles that they're very sensitive for the Greek people.
very quick reaction, because you're clearly not agreeing here. Yes, very quick, because we don't have much time.
The hypocrisy is that New Democracy will follow the agreement. They said that this is an agreement. They almost accuse us as traitors of the national leaders. And now, if it's such a bad agreement, they would cancel it. They're going to follow it, and this is the hypocrisy. And the other thing, I wanted to say, two other actions were that the police took in charge the refugees question and took in charge the prisons. Were part of the justice.
Greek.
We are going towards an urban style, Hungarian style.
Well, that's a big statement to make here.
And this is not the center. You are talking about shift to the center. This is not the center.
Because David and myself, we are at the same party, and he knows very well my opinion and our opinion as Nea Demokratia, according to Fidesz. Well, it is quite important to explain that Kyriakos Mitsotakis was the initiator for Article 7 for Fidesz. He was the initiator in EPP. So it is something that it is not a truth. It is a lie. It is a huge lie. We are trying to lead our country back to normality. Back to normality with safety and security. Back to normality with freedom of speech. Back to normality with separation of powers.
Unfortunately, we do have to move on. We're running out of time.
Politics.
It is so interesting. Okay, let's move on. Hang on a second. We've got to move on. We've run out of time, because now let's move on. Because Britain's ambassador to the US today resigned amid a spectacular falling out between the UK and the US. So let's find out what this is all about. Pomp and pageantry galore. It was 1 month ago that the UK rolled out the red carpet for Donald Trump. The US president was treated to a state banquet with the Queen and a VIP welcome to Downing Street. I again, he says, embracing the UK's ambassador to the US.
Hope it's going well.
But 1 month on, and things definitely aren't going well. The UK ambassador's diplomatic cables back to London have been leaked to the press. And it's fair to say Britain's man in Washington didn't hold back. His memos describing the Trump administration as, quote, dysfunctional, unpredictable, diplomatically clumsy, and inept. A stark assessment to which it didn't take Donald Trump long to respond and perhaps justify. Taking to Twitter, he blasted, "I do not know the ambassador, but he's not liked or well thought of within the US. We will no longer deal with him." He continued, "The wacky ambassador that the UK foisted upon the United States is not someone we are thrilled with, a very stupid guy." Sticking the boot into the UK Prime Minister for her handling of Brexit, he said, "I told Theresa May how to do that deal, but she went her own foolish way, was unable to get it done. A disaster." Theresa May stood by her envoy, but today he fell on his sword, saying it is now impossible for him to carry out his role in Washington. All eyes are now on who will take his place and whether he or she will be able to rebuild relations between the world's closest allies. I mean, I think this spat seemed to have blown up. So now the UK ambassador to the US has resigned. What do you think about this spat and Donald Trump's reaction to this as well?
Well, this is certainly a remarkable story.
Between two of the closest allies.
Yes, rather astonishing. I mean, the one thing is what the British ambassador had to say about the US government. But just as interesting is who actually leaked this confidential information. And something like this will have an impact on how diplomatic services work if you don't have the possibility of writing down some confidential
so this is the bigger
analysis
underlying issue.
So I think there's a story behind the story here.
And you think that they just, Donald Trump had to react to this as a show of, public show.
But he always reacts this way. I've started giving up commenting on every single action, but
the ambassador has resigned,
Well, the ambassador now has resigned, and still there are other ways how a US president could have reacted.
Okay. All right. We have a lot more coming up for you on the program. Italy says that it will send resources to the Libyan Coast Guard, but is outsourcing the migration problem the right move for the EU. Plus, we also have Hello Kitty popping up in the European Commission's daily briefing. Find out why in tonight's Raw Moment. welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, despite a growing backlash from the UN, humanitarian organizations and officials abroad, the Italian government is stepping up its crackdown on migrants. To a chorus of press and police in Sicily, Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, he oversaw the closure of Europe's once largest migrant center, just a day after saying that military ships and air patrols could be used to keep migrants out of Italy, and announcing plans for 10 motorboats to be gifted to the Libyan Coast Guard. Meanwhile, in Libya, growing concerns over the safety of hundreds of migrants detained or trapped in detention centers after airstrikes killed at least 53 adults and 6 children near the outskirts of Tripoli. German Chancellor Angela Merkel condemned the attacks, and the UN says it's repeatedly warned about the dangers of sending migrants back to Libya. In the wake of the attack, hundreds of detainees are now on hunger strike over fears for their safety. Okay, joining me for this panel, we have Italian Lega MEP Paolo Borchia from the Identity and Democracy Group.
Hello.
And Slovenian MEP Tanja Fajon from the Socialists and Democrats Group. And back with us, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. All right, I'll start with you, Paolo. What Matteo Salvini is doing, isn't he going a little bit overboard with the efforts to keep migrants out? Because now you're talking about, okay, so you close this, the camp, military, sending boats to Libya. Is a bit too much now?
Well, I think it's a message to be sent because for several years, Italy has been left alone in managing migration matter. And now it's clear that we need a different approach, a brand new one. And, I think the most important issue is trying to develop a new concept of managing the emergency in Africa and in third countries. So is Salvini doing this
to send a message? Are you saying that he's going through the lengths and the, well, some would say extremes that he's doing just to send a message because no one's helping Italy? Is that what he's doing?
Yes, because the situation, the previous situation was not sustainable anymore, and we received a lot of migrants coming from third countries in past years, and now a new approach was necessary.
But sending migrants back, just quickly to Libya, where, as we were saying...
Yeah, I do understand. Okay. I do understand your question, but the matter is not sending back or not sending migrants back. The matter is that avoiding that thousands of people are in need of change continents, and so we will need a new approach to the policy on development on the third countries.
I'd like to ask Tanja, because those, of course, who are critical of Italy will say, okay, well, Italy's gone rogue now, but at the same time, is this just their way of saying, well, the EU has no better idea or no answer? This is the best you've got?
First of all, what Salvini is doing today with threats, and I'm coming from Slovenia, to build fences or barbed wires or to close down the Schengen border, I think this is a shame. This is not the Europe we want. I do understand the situation about migrants in Italy. I do also understand, I was a journalist before, when we were 15, 20 years ago dealing with Lampedusa. I have a lot of sentiments, especially for migrants and refugees, but Salvini needs also to listen to solidarity. We need to find common European solutions. Solidarity. Not in that sense, because with nationalistic and populistic rhetorics, what he's clearly doing, he's not contributing to any efficient managing of migration and safety of outside European borders.
Well, mass migration should be avoided in this sense. I mean, we should try to give... sorry. We should... finish and then you will have the floor. We should need to help people in third country, but we can do it alone. We need European Union, we need United States. We need China efforts, joint efforts in order to solve this matter.
Is it human to close down the center, to close down the ports, to criminalize humanitarian organizations?
Okay, quick comment, Darren, before we move on.
I think the big thing we need to focus on, because sometimes when we do focus on this issue, we get the
impression gets into that.
No, we still think it is a crisis. Let's look at the numbers. The number of people coming to Italy since 2016 has gone from 181,000 in 2016 to 3,000 so far this year. Yet the proportion of people who have died relatively has gone up 667 to 1 in 6.
Okay.
So why is Mr. Salvini playing on this? Because it's good for politics, but let's not move that away from the reality is that Italy, along with most of Europe, is no longer facing a migration
crisis. And hang on. Before we get into that,
3,000 migrants a year is sustainable.
17%
We've got
less.
But the migrants arriving past year, so where are
I have to say, we will continue this part. Hang on, because I just want to get a bit of insight on what's going on the other side of, in Libya. Let's go to our correspondent, Annelise Borges. She was in Libya just a couple of months ago, and she spent time visiting some of those migrant camps that we're talking about now. And she's back in Paris right now. So Annelise, okay, it's heated discussion every time we talk about migration here. Two things. So tell us what you saw in those migrant camps and whether the EU bears any responsibility when we're talking about security of the people who were there.
Well, Tessa, it's very difficult to negotiate access to these camps. We spent quite a lot of time asking Libya's Interior Ministry to allow us to enter those detention facilities. There are an estimated 26 detention facilities to house migrants and refugees across the country. Some 5 or 6 are still operating in and around Tripoli. We visited one in Azawiya that used to be a tire factory. And what we saw, and that is the case repeatedly in other centers as well, from what we've heard from NGOs and UN agencies on the ground, is that these are warehouses that used to house goods and are now used to house people. The one we visited housed some 850 people that were all sleeping in communal areas. Men were separated from women, but they were all sleeping on the floor on thin mattresses. And we are talking about men, pregnant women, children who were there indefinitely with very little access to the outside world, with very little knowledge of what would happen to them, with, of course, this renewed upsurge in fighting getting ever so close. Since April 4th, since this military offensive launched by renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar has been getting closer to the capital, Tripoli, several centers have been targeted, including, of course, this latest attack that killed over 50 people. And migrants and refugees that I spoke to in this detention center in Azawiya told me, listen, we just want to get out of here. Libya was never our destination in the first place. We need to get to Europe. This plea had been, of course, echoed by UN agencies on the ground that said, due to this renewed wave of fighting, these people were indeed at great risk and needed to be evacuated. UN agencies had been pleading with EU countries. Italy took in some 146 people in the end of May. Niger took some 300 people recently, a couple of weeks ago on June 20th. But of course, that is well below the number that the UNHCR, the Agency for Refugees, wanted to see out of Libya. That is some 3,000 people. I spoke to the Interior Minister in Libya, Fatih Bashaga, who is, let's say, the man in charge of these detention facilities. And he said the task that Europe attributed to Libya is far too great. It's like asking a sick doctor to care for patients.
All right, thank you for that report, Annelise Borges there. So I'd go back to you, Paolo. So
yes,
two things.
It's clear that this
Isn't
approach
that a bigger crisis? Isn't that a bigger crisis?
Work. Yeah.
Isn't that big? As Darren was saying, is it even a crisis here? But that in Libya is a bigger crisis.
Yeah, we are perfectly aware that the situation in refugees camps in Libya is very awful. That's why I complained that in Italy, when we had leftist governments, they cut the budget allocation to international cooperation. And if we don't understand that we need to change our approach, we won't find a solution to the migration.
What does that mean, though? What does that mean? What is the solution? Does it mean that other countries will just take more people?
No, the solution is that we should try to make common efforts in order to get better conditions in
wouldn't
third
disagree with
countries.
That, right?
Look, I've been last year in Niger and very close to Libyan border. I saw a terrible, unhuman conditions in these centers.
And
we really have to do more. And we failed as European Union how to manage
That's
with
why
migration.
Italy is trying to do this.
But not also, we cannot push back people to centers in Libya and leave them there to die. And this is what is happening because we lack European solidarity. We lack the European governments to find migration, asylum, efficient policy. And that also includes the Italian government. We all have to be on board.
Very quickly, because we do have to go.
There's almost an ironic element to all of this, which is actually Italy needs migration because Italians for decades are not having enough kids. Its population is on
maybe
a
you don't know the figures on employment.
And Italy is a country that actually needs population growth because it's potentially going to lose significant millions.
This is not the solution. This is not the solution,
If you can do it in 10 seconds to respond to Darren.
We should improve demographic policies, but the solution is not.
We've been trying that for decades.
This is not the solution. I'm very sorry.
Giving people free fields and land has not worked.
And this is not the last debate we're going to have.
Your idea would be to change the population, the placing from one continent to another one. I'm sorry, this is not my solution.
We will still have a lot more for you on the program coming up on Raw Politics, the latest in our Raw Welcome series. Our young guy from the French suburbs was tapped to lead Marine Le Pen's party to Brussels. That's after the break. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Well, we're introducing you to some of the new faces here in the European Parliament. There's many of them. And a part of our new mini-series with incoming MEPs from across the bloc, showing them around with a special Raw welcome. So, which comes this week now from Strasbourg. Let's take a look.
Meet Jordan Bardella, the far-right millennial who's taken France by storm. From the suburbs of Paris to the political stage, he's been with the National Rally since he was just 16. And, handpicked by Marine Le Pen, led the party to first place in this year's European elections. Sitting with the EU's rebel group Identity and Democracy, he's already shaking things up, his party refusing to stand at the Parliament's official opening ceremony. At just 23, this fresh-faced leader is one to watch.
First and foremost, you're 23, you're one of the youngest MEPs here. And obviously some people will say, oh, but you're too young, or you're inexperienced. How do you respond to such criticism?
Moi, je pense avoir fait mes preuves pendant la campagne. En tout cas, c'est ce qu'ont jugé les Français, puisqu'ils nous ont placés en tête et ils ont placé la liste que j'ai conduite en tête des élections européennes.
There's a lot of discussion about your background. You grew up in the suburbs, les banlieues, as we call them in French. Can you tell us about that?
En fait, le fait d'avoir grandi en banlieue m'a amené à la politique, parce que j'ai grandi dans un territoire, la Seine-Saint-Denis, qui est un département français très connu, réputé malheureusement de manière négative pour l'insécurité, la violence, l'immigration massive non assimilée et le communautarisme, qui a été le terreau dans beaucoup de quartiers du fondamentalisme islamiste, qui s'est imposé aussi comme une loi dans beaucoup de quartiers. Et ça m'a amené à vouloir changer les choses en réalité, même si c'est un peu utopiste.
But why do you think it is about communitarianism rather than socio-economic problems?
Parce que pendant des années dans ces quartiers, on a essayé d'expliquer les problèmes et les fractures qu'il pouvait y avoir sous l'angle économique. Or, il y a beaucoup de quartiers en France, de territoires notamment dans les campagnes, dans les territoires ruraux, où là-bas, on vit très loin des services publics, où il y a de moins en moins d'emplois, où c'est de plus en plus difficile de trouver une maternité, une gare ouverte ou un médecin. Et là-bas, on n'a pas ces phénomènes de violence. Là-bas, on n'utilise pas la violence pour exprimer cette colère sociale.
You have to admit also that Euroscepticism is not the majority in Parliament. You're still a minority. So do you accept that most Europeans are not Eurosceptic like you?
En fait, il y a de plus en plus de Français et de peuples aujourd'hui en Europe qui contestent le fonctionnement de l'Union européenne. En fait, à chaque fois qu'on a demandé l'avis des Français sur l'Union européenne, ils l'ont rejeté. Ça a été vrai en 2005, lorsqu'il y a eu le référendum sur la Constitution, ils ont dit non. Ça a été vrai en 2014, lorsqu'ils ont mis le Front National à l'époque en tête. Et ça a été vrai en 2019, lorsqu'ils nous ont remis en tête des élections européennes. Donc l'Union européenne, aujourd'hui, beaucoup de Français se demandent à quoi elle nous sert. Et beaucoup de Français font le constat qu'elle est incapable de les protéger. Donc en réalité, soit on réoriente massivement la construction européenne. Moi, je ne suis pas anti-européen, je pense qu'on peut faire autrement.
Okay, you already started talking about it. So what do you want to do in the parliament? What are the subjects that you will be most vocal on?
Le premier des sujets sur lequel on a eu à se positionner depuis quelques jours, c'est évidemment le Mercosur et les traités de libre-échange. En fait, l'Union européenne négocie beaucoup de traités de libre-échange avec le monde entier qui mettent en concurrence nos travailleurs, nos agriculteurs, nos producteurs avec des producteurs et des travailleurs du monde entier. Et tout cela crée une concurrence déloyale. Ça met en concurrence notre économie avec des produits qui sont fabriqués avec un coût qui est moindre. Et donc tout cela crée un problème de concurrence déloyale.
Are there benefits to this trade?
Moi, ce que je regarde, ce sont les résultats économiques. Et en réalité, ce libre-échange global a en réalité amené beaucoup de pauvreté dans notre pays.
Do you recognize that some of your supporters maybe agree with you economically, like protect the French jobs?
Ouais.
But at the same time, do you acknowledge that maybe there are some that still harbor Islamophobic ideas or xenophobic ideas?
Non, parce que moi, je ne me sens pas avoir des propos xénophobes, avoir des propos offensants. Je dis juste qu'aujourd'hui, dans un pays où vous avez 6 millions de chômeurs, 10 millions de pauvres, on ne peut pas accueillir une immigration supplémentaire.
You are part of a political grouping, and maybe some of those grouping in the parliament are a little bit more extreme than your party. Are you not worried that this will have a negative impact?
Je ne crois pas et je conteste, moi, le terme d'extrême droite qui est généralement utilisé par nos opposants. Les partis qui sont à nos côtés sont des partis souverainistes. Ce sont des gens qui ont été portés ici dans l'hémicycle de manière démocratique par les peuples, à 15, 20, 25%, sur des scores qui sont parfois très massifs et qui démontrent aujourd'hui la volonté des peuples d'être protégés, d'être défendus et surtout de tourner le dos à une Union européenne qui a trahi absolument toutes ses promesses.
So do you agree with all the other parties in your political group?
Mais on n'est pas forcément toujours d'accord. On ne cherche pas des clones, on cherche des alliés.
Now that you're inside the parliament, and if you see how it works from the inside, are you willing to keep an open mind that maybe you will change your mind about the European Union?
Oui, mais je suis pragmatique. Quand des choses vont dans le bon sens, je les soutiens. Mais en fait, je vois les dégâts de... faut pas se laisser, si vous voulez, impressionner par les hémicycles, par le Parlement, par la grandeur de ces institutions sur place. Faut voir les dégâts que font les politiques qui sont imposées par Bruxelles et par l'Union européenne dans nos pays respectifs. Et tout ça, je le vois.
Okay, coming up on Raw Politics, should the EU be outsourcing its migration problem? We talked about it earlier, and now we want to hear from you. Your call is coming up at 7 p.m. Brussels time. The contact information is on your screen. You can call us at 00800 3333 7002 and join the debate using the hashtag Raw Politics. Our lines are opening soon after the break. Welcome back to Raw Politics. So as usual, after the program, we have your call, which starts at 7 p.m. Brussels time at 6 p.m. if you are in the UK and Ireland. And hosting tonight is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. And joining him is from the Brexit Party, MEP Robert Rowland. And with us also is Swedish journalist Teresa Kuckler. So we were talking about three questions, as always, every evening. Darren, what are we asking our
cheap
audience?
Flights to this diplomatic row in the UK to essentially this ongoing problem, discussion point of migration. Success for Salvini. Italy's Deputy Prime Minister tours the closure of a migrant centre in Sicily. For him, it's proof that his migration crackdown is working. Part of his plan, giving motorboats to the Libyan Coast Guard to stop people smugglers entering international waters. The EU-backed strategy is to return migrants rescued from Libyan waters back to camps on shore so that they don't drown. Yet scores were killed in an airstrike on a Libyan detention centre just last week. So we're asking, should the EU be outsourcing its migration problem? Meanwhile, is the special relationship still special? Well, Britain's ambassador to the US has resigned amid a spectacular falling out between the close allies. It's all over the leak of the UK ambassador's frank assessment of the Trump administration. He branded the White House dysfunctional and inept, and that prompted an angry response from Donald Trump, who says he would no longer be able to work with the UK ambassador. So we want to know, was Britain's ambassador to the US right to resign? And a new strategy to fight climate change, with the consumer footing the bill. France is to bring in an environmental tax on all flights from French airports. It's an extra €1.50 for economy tickets on flights within the EU and up to €18 for long-haul business class tickets. In the age of cheap flights, catching a plane is often less expensive than the more environmentally friendly option of taking the train. So we want to know, is flying too cheap? Come on, Europe, have your say. Should the EU be outsourcing its migration problem? Was Britain's ambassador to the US right to resign? And is flying too cheap? And you know what to do, pick up the phone, it is free, 00800 333 702. You can email us at rawpaul@euronews.com. Get in touch via Skype. Love to see your face this Wednesday evening, or indeed, use the hashtag #RawPolitics on Facebook or Twitter.
All right, so it's summertime. We're all going to be going on holiday soon. Is flying too cheap? I think that's an interesting question. What do you think, Robert? Is flying too cheap now?
I wish it was cheaper, actually. Certainly for long haul.
That would not be helpful to the environment, as some
How do you get to Brussels? Do you fly from the UK or do you get the train?
I took the train. Next week I'll be flying from London to Basel. But on this occasion, because it's such an easy trip, I took the train, of course.
In terms of, putting a tax at €1, 150 maximum in France for economy, would that even make any difference? Flying would still be cheap.
Well, France is the first country. A lot of countries are following. I know my own country, Sweden, there's been a debate about a similar tax. So, domino effect, maybe. I think the problem, though, is not whether or not flying is too cheap. It's that the trains are too expensive. There's very little choice. I was just on a train, the fastest one in Europe, 350 kilometers an hour in Spain. Excellent, beautiful, lovely trip. But it's, I think, a single ticket from Malaga to Madrid was the double price than a Ryanair ticket, a cheap flight.
And I absolutely hate flying. I have to fly a lot. I hate it. As in, it's just not a very pleasant experience these days.
Sure.
Particularly with low-cost airlines, not naming any of them by name. But the problem is, not only are trains expensive, it's also just not feasible. I mean, for example, I grew up in Ireland. I mean, I have to get a plane, or else I'm going to sit on a boat for quite a long period of time. And again, if you are Latvian or Lithuanian and you work in Portugal or the UK or France, realistically, and you want to go home to see your family for the weekend,
it's the only option.
It's not just by cost, it's a quick way of getting around.
So what do you think? We would love to know what you think. You can join Robert, Darren, and later another MEP, Kathleen Van Bremt, also on the show. So call us. You call us at the number 00800 333 7002. You can write to rawpaul@euronews.com or use the hashtag #RawPolitics on all of social media and look for us on Skype as well. Okay, we have time now for our Raw moment. The EU has fined a Japanese firm for breaching EU rules, but don't nod off just yet, because the merchandise in question has transformed what is normally a dull commission briefing and left one poor spokesperson struggling to keep a straight face. So that's tonight's Raw moment.
The Commission today has fined Sanrio the 6.2 million for banning traders from selling across border within the European Economic Area. The restrictions concern products, held by, whose IP is held by Sanrio, notably Hello Kitty, the anthropomorphic cat girl, also known by her real name, Kitty White, as well as other characters owned by Sanrio, such as Charmy Kitty, which is Hello Kitty's own white Persian cat, and Dear Daniel, Hello Kitty's boyfriend.
That was fun.
You were laughing more than anyone, Tessa.
I know.
But there was a Teletubbies moment a couple of years back where there were questions about Teletubbies and the whole press room burst out laughing.
They should have more of these topics at Commission.
Well, and actually it's quite ironic because one of the few ways the EU makes money is by fining normally American internet companies or technology, and finally the Japanese are getting fined.
All right, well, there you go.
It's a very nice toy, though, by the way, just to say.
Okay, so we would love to hear your views on what we've discussed today, and you know how to get in touch and look for us on social media. Remember, use the hashtag #RawPolitics, and don't go away. Your call is up next.